Great to see you, Bianca. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Justin.
Well, I think one of the most important things that I'd like to hear about today is all about our cow and your journey, because you used to work in the mines, is that right?
Yeah, feels like a lifetime ago.
How the hell did you become a farmer?
Well, it's a funny story, I guess. Dave and I, we met in the mines and we decided that we wanted to live on a farm. So we'd saved and saved and saved and saved to try and buy ourselves a farm because it is super difficult for young people to get onto a farm without the help of their parents or succession planning or, family inheritance and things like that. Like we didn't have any of that. So we literally saved up as much money as we could and bought a farm that we could afford at the time. It wasn't anything flash, and it was a pretty big reality shock for me. I came from Cairns, on the beaches of Cairns, and I moved to a farm, and we moved into a tin shed with no power, no running water. Like Dave used to hold the garden hose for me so I could wash my hair. We were flat broke, like the brokest you could ever imagine. We were like living off peanut butter sayos, like literally. It was a time, and not long after we took over the farm, we came into the really horrific drought and the Black Summer bushfires as well. So it was a pretty big reality check for me to, not have any farming experience at all. And then to come into like one of the worst droughts that Australia's ever experienced was, yeah, challenging to say the least.
When was that? That was 2018, is that right?
18, yeah. So we bought the farm in 17 and then 18, pretty much 18, 19, and then 2020 is when the drought broke. But yeah, there was like 2 solid years there of drought, and then the Black Summer bushfires as well were in the middle of that. And like we were up to our eyeballs in a mortgage, and then we had to buy livestock to stock the place as well. So
Yep.
we basically, like, banks don't lend money for livestock, so you get them on a ridiculously high interest rate. So we're talking like 12 to 13% for interest rate for cows, and then we went into the drought after that. So we were basically looking down the barrel of potentially losing our farm if we didn't do something different. Like we really got pushed into a corner to think, as a farmer, you never really know what price you're going to get for your livestock. Like it's not like working a job or selling normal products online like we do now. Like it's very much boom and bust, and you never know what price you're going to get. You're 100% a price taker. So we wanted to try and secure a price for not only the livestock that we were producing on our farm, but also offer that to other farmers as well. Because like I said, like you literally don't know what price you're going to get. You work for 12 months of the year just hoping like hell that the prices are going to be up when you've got livestock ready to sell.
And then you had a crazy idea. What was your
Yeah,
crazy
and
idea?
then we had a crazy idea. We started a Facebook page, and I think like probably the beauty of it was that like I said, I don't come from a farming background, so I couldn't comprehend how you would work for 12 months of the year and not know what you're going to get paid. So I said to Dave, like, let's start a Facebook page. Let's start selling some of our own beef off our own farm. Like, we're not butchers. We don't know how we're going to take orders, how we're going to cut it up, how we're going to deliver it, package it, and no idea about any of those things. But it just started with a simple Facebook page advertising beef for sale. And I'm pretty sure the first people that bought the beef off us was just like our friends and family that felt a bit sorry for us trying to help out. But eventually, like, there was like legitimate customers that came on board, and
Were you
you know,
advertising, or were people just finding it, or how did
we
it?
would no, it was just a normal Facebook page. We had no paid ads, no marketing, anything like that. And I was just
Word of mouth, people
word
sharing
of
it.
mouth. Yeah, mostly just like friends of ours that were sharing it across their Facebook pages, and then it just kept going through there. And I'd post it in like local, like your local buy swap sell groups and things like that. And yeah, like more and more people got onto it. And I remember the first delivery, like we had one little steer that we wanted to sell off our farm, and we ended up selling six. So we were able to bring in other farmers quite quickly to what we were doing.
But what about butchering and all that kind of stuff? How did you even figure that out?
Yeah, so like I said, we're not butchers. So we went to a local butcher and we said, hey, we want to do a private kill for us. Will you help us? And he's like, yep, no worries. So he ended up cutting it all up, packaging it. He lent us his cold room trailer, and we hooked it up to the back of our Toyota, and we had an extension lead from a generator that we had on the back of the ute. We had a generator ratchet strapped to the back of the ute with an extension lead zippy tied down the drawbar across the A-frame into the ute, so we could keep the cold room trailer cold while we were driving around Brisbane. And I don't know if you've ever tried to reverse a Land Cruiser dual cab with a big trailer on the back down a one-way street in Brisbane, but it is a nightmare. And we had no idea where we were going. We were trying to find all these houses in like high rises, delivering meat to, and so many of those customers that we delivered to first are still customers of ours now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so fast forward, how many years is that? 6 years? 5 years?
That was so 5 years ago this year, actually. We started in 2019. March was our first delivery.
And now you service many thousands of Australians every month.
Yeah, that's right. We've got tens of thousands of customers, like all across Australia that we deliver to. We've got farmers all across Australia as well. We work with over 100 farmers all across New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria that we deliver our beef to. That we source our livestock from. And then, yeah, customers everywhere. And I guess the best thing that we ever did was launch our exclusive Eaters Club, which is our subscription meat club. And people sign up and they get a box of meat delivered regularly.
I've tried your meat. I just had it the other day, and it's absolutely outstanding.
Oh, that's good to hear.
I haven't got through it all yet, but I don't know. I didn't get a chance to go through on the QR code, but I'm assuming you can see which farmers you've sourced from, or at least a collective view of which farmers you're sourcing from, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Like every single packet of meat actually has that farmer's name on it. So you can make that connection through our social media. You can go through and look at the videos on our website. You know, we're often doing videos where we go and visit our farmers, and you can feel like you're directly supporting that farming family, which is something that's really special to us. There's so many companies out there that say, you know, we source from farmers, but like it's hard to say. It's easy to say that, but it's hard to actually do that. You know, like the other day we went and visited some of our farmers that they've been farmers of ours for nearly 5 years, and I've watched their kids grow up. I've watched their farm increase threefold. I've seen how much their lives have changed over the years that they've supplied us. So that's something that's really special to us.
Yeah, and I think probably one of the things that I really like about what you're doing is that exactly as you've just said. Instead of paying a lot of mouths along the supply chain to the supermarket, you're actually just going direct to the farmer. So you're getting better pricing, and it's much better pricing, much better for the farmer as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. Like at the moment, we sort of sit 30% above the market of what farmers would normally get paid just by selling the commodity through other avenues. And you know, I don't even think that yes, price plays a big part of it, but it's just the pride that comes with our farmers as well. Like they love knowing that there's a family sitting down in Brisbane or Melbourne and actually enjoying the produce that they've grown off their farm. Because as a farmer, once your livestock leave your farm, that's the end of the story. You don't know where they end up. They could end up exported. They could go to a feedlot. They could be in a supermarket, but you don't know that story. But with us, like we're able to put that piece of meat on someone's dinner plate and go, that actually came from Dave and Bianca's farm, or that come from Steve and Michelle's farm. So there's a real sense of pride and just you feel this sense of responsibility by being an our cow farmer, because so many of our customers actually directly reach out to them and be like, hey, I had beef from your farm last night and it was unbelievable. Yeah. So that's pretty special.
And how do you go about selecting the farmers that you work with? I'm sure you get a lot of farmers coming to you, but how do you figure out who fits the brief?
So we have a pretty stringent quality program and checklist that our farmers need to meet. We also have a livestock manager who vets all of our farmers as well and makes sure that they're meeting our standards, they're aligned with the same values and the same ethics as us, which is very similar to what Chief does. You know, like you guys are working with top producers, you are working with organic farmers as well. So I think that's why both of our businesses align so well, is because we hold the same values. And when two companies and two people hold the same value, I think it's something, you know, important to be able to like grow together.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, for us, we started back in 2015, and we actually started really as a health food company because we'd seen that when you look at the supermarket shelves and you look at the back of the packet, particularly snacks, you're going to see lots of ultra processed stuff, usually a lot of added sugar as well, and so it was interesting when one of the only ways to solve that problem was with beef. So we did a crazy thing as well. We had a crazy idea and put beef in a bar. It's not that crazy. It's just basically jerky in a bar format, but for whatever reason, it blows people's minds.
It tastes amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And then, so when we started advertising on Facebook, we started getting a lot of pushback, and we started hearing a pretty consistent narrative that beef is terrible for the planet. And that was the first that we'd really heard anything like that. So we went and did a bit of a deep dive and went we figured the quickest way to answer that question was to go straight to the source and go and meet with farmers like you. And it was an amazing experience because I think it really opened our eyes to considering the full supply chain. And, like any business or any industry, there's a whole spectrum of different types of people with different focuses. And the people that we resonated with most sound like they are the people that you resonate with most, where they care deeply about looking after their land. One of the words we heard a lot was, we are custodians for our land. They didn't feel like the land was theirs, that they were there to look after it and pass it on to the next generation. Obviously their own kids, but also, Australia as a country and a community. High on animal welfare and really wanting to look after their animals. And, all animals that we eat have one bad day, and that was the way that they would think about it. I don't know if that resonates with you too, but up until that one bad day, they would want them to have a great life and be grazing as naturally as possible and free from antibiotics and growth hormones and all the sorts of things that you can tend to find in animal agriculture. Doesn't seem particularly prevalent, but it does seem to be there. So yeah, I think that's why we were super excited at the thought of doing a collab with you guys. And a big part of our mission has become how do we champion farmers that are doing things in a way that we really resonate with, and how do we educate consumers about why that is better for the planet, better for human health, better for the animals, better for the farmers. We really see our place as a snack food. It's ironic in that you're probably ahead of us actually in terms of being able to educate en masse, but really from a snack food perspective, one of the easy things for us is that we can ship Australia-wide, we can ship internationally, and so our customer base is essentially global. And so we see the role that we can play for farmers is educating consumers on a large scale, both nationally and internationally, about why this is a better way to do things. And I guess one of the challenges I'm sure for farmers is typically or traditionally there's been such a disconnect, as you said, between the farmer and the consumer, or the eater, as I think some farmers like to say, and being able to connect the dots for both sides, I think, is really critically important. And that's something that I really massively value about what you guys are doing. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to, both of us thinking, and probably our number one value in both businesses, the importance of grass-fed beef and ethical farming practices. And I know we spoke about it before, is, there's so many, hot words at the moment around farming, around regenerative and biodynamic and all this sort of stuff. But I sort of mentioned, like, so many of our farmers, they wouldn't know what that word meant if you asked them, but they do exactly what you just said. They're custodians of their land. They're not using antibiotics. They're not using hormones. They're not using chemicals and sprays on their farm. They're rotating their paddocks. They're cell grazing. They're doing all of these things because inside themselves, they feel like it's the right thing to do, and they can see that it's better for their land, it's better for their environment and their animals. So they just do it naturally. So I think that's probably something that's important to both of us, is seeing that from a farming level, that they're actually taking those steps to looking after their environment. And as a result of that, they're producing better beef. Like, it's one thing that I've seen across both of our customers say is the quality is exceptional. Like, the quality is so much better, and they don't mind, paying a little bit more because the quality is so much better. So I think, seeing farmers taking those extra steps on their land is producing a much better product for our customers.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think that there's education that probably needs to happen for farmers, and there's education that needs to happen for consumers about what each other means by different words and what each other wants. And it's interesting that you say that a lot of farmers are following regenerative or biodynamic or pick your next label without necessarily thinking of it that way, or even realising that it's would come under that category. I mean, even when we think about organic, we use an organic source beef because we can, and it's all fully certified and those sorts of things. But most of your farmers, as I understand it, they could be certified as organic, but the certification is very expensive and restrictive in some cases. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I think the some farmers choose to go down the organic path if they're able to, and if their land and their environment permits them to be organic certified. Other
Mm.
farmers, if they follow the philosophy, they do as much as they can, but there are some restrictions that are out of their control that they need to be able to implement in order for animal welfare. So they're not able to be organic certified, and then again, the cost is quite intensive as well, and
Mm.
you really need to be able to guarantee a premium for your product if you are going to go down that organic certification path, because it is expensive, it is time consuming, it's a big commitment for farmers to take on board. So they really need a long contract or a long guarantee that they are continuously going to get a premium for their product if they do that. And like for my farm, I can't be organic certified because we have some particular parasites and things in our country that we can't control that we need to treat in order for animal welfare. Like if we don't treat our livestock for these specific parasites, they will die. So I
Yeah.
would rather make sure that they're treated and their animal welfare is high rather than just having an organic certification. So, it's a fine line between animal welfare and certifying your place.
But what would be involved in that? Is that like a dip, or like what does that
It's
mean?
just a drench. It's just like we just have like a pour on drench once a year to stop them getting sick from these particular parasites. And it's probably more so when the season is out of our control. Like if we have a really, really wet season like we are at the moment, it's like a breeding ground because we're in subtropics. It's humid, it's wet, it's hot. It's a perfect breeding ground for parasites. Whereas if you're far out west in a dry, arid, more like desert country, it's hard for things to grow out there and bacteria to grow, so that the diseases that they're susceptible are far less. So it's all dependent on your environment.
So one drench a year would mean that you're not allowed to get organic certification.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Hmm. Interesting. And so, why do you focus on grass fed? What is that? What does that mean for you in terms of your consumer base and I guess philosophies about farming? Why is that important from your perspective?
We found that being grass-fed is what our customers want. We found that they're looking for a healthier alternative. They want to look after their bodies. They want to know that the product that they're feeding their families has been ethically raised, sustainably produced, and it is a grass-fed product. Like, I often hear like, you are what you eats. And when we're eating and consuming meat, we want to make sure that they're consuming a natural diet. And
Mm.
I often see livestock from other areas coming in that have been grain fed or have been feedlotted, and they just don't seem as healthy and happy as what a normal animal grazing would be. So
Yeah.
I think like massive health benefits around grass-fed meat is obviously higher omega-3s, better fatty acids. It's better for you. It just makes you feel lighter. I know like now I've been eating grass-fed meat for so long that I can distinctly taste the difference between
Yeah.
a grass-fed steak and a grain-fed steak. And it may not be so easy just to the normal palate, but once you're used to eating grass-fed product and you go and eat like a feed-lotted product or a grain-fed product, it is like chalk and cheese, so different. So I think just the health benefits far outweigh the couple of bucks more that you might pay for a grass-fed product. And the same goes for you guys.
Oh, look, I think we chose it primarily for health reasons when we first started, because that is the conventional wisdom, that it is, yeah, as you say, higher omega-3s, vitamin A, vitamin E. Um, there's lots to like on the health side of things. In practice, I don't think it's an enormous difference on the health side of things. I think, in um, while there is a difference, I think that the thing for me that makes grass-fed more attractive is, as you say, the animal welfare. I kind of think if you want good food, it's got to be in good soil, or it's got to be grazed well, and live a healthy, happy life. So I think that's pretty important. But probably the most important thing, I think, from my perspective, is that it seems like the grass-fed farmers are generally having better outcomes on their land. Is that something that you've seen, or you agree with, disagree with?
100%. And to be a grass fed, like to finish livestock 100% on grass is bloody difficult. Like you
Mm.
have to be an exceptional farmer to be able to 100% grass fed and grass finish your livestock. It is easy for farmers to put a bin in a paddock, fill it full of grain, and just watch the kilos go onto their livestock. But being grass fed, you have to be looking at your seasons. You've got to be planning ahead. You're fertilizing, you're planting, you're rotating your crops. Like it's intensive, and it takes a lot to maintain and to go into being a grass-fed, grass-finished farmer. So it's, for us, like they do need to be paid more. They do need to be getting a premium for the livestock that they're producing because it is intensive. It's a lot more work. There's a lot more planning that goes into it. The input costs are higher. There is, there's a lot more that goes into producing grass-fed beef.
And so, in terms of outcome for the land, though, I'm assuming. So, if we talk about, let's talk about the animal firstly. If they're eating grains, they're not eating their natural diet, so they gain weight very quickly because they're essentially becoming overweight. Is that a fair summary or unfair or?
They're just putting on weight faster than normal and eating a diet that, like even us as humans, if we were to eat a diet that's high in corn, high in soy, high in canola, it's just unnatural and it makes you feel lethargic. It makes you feel bloated and full and, it's like high energy but doesn't sustain you for very long. So they're constantly grazing, constantly looking for more. Whereas, if you're eating a natural diet, you're filling yourself up, you're able to, like feel full and feel sustained for longer. And the quality of the meat that's produced because of that is far better.
So people that would argue the other side would say, but that means then you need to rely more on grazing, which is more intensity in the land, and more animals to feed the same number of people. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something that comes into the equation?
Yeah, like I know there is always going to be a need for that side. There's always going to be a need for industrially produced protein because we have to feed the world, and not everybody can afford to pay a little bit more for a grass-fed or organic product. So there's always going to be a need for that side of farming, and like we have to work hand in hand. But if more farmers are able to choose to raise their animals sustainably and choose to follow a grass-fed, grass-finished program, it will be better for the environment long term. But it's exactly the same as organic carb. Like not every farmer can do it, and I get that, I understand it. Like their soils just don't permit it. So there is always going to be every farmer needs to choose what's best for them and their farm, and they obviously have to make money out of it as well. But just being more aware of the other avenues that their livestock can go to and the premium they can get for their product is important as well.
Which is why it's critical to be able to connect consumers and farmers more directly, right?
That's
So
right.
it's the easiest way to, as we talked about, educate the consumer about why it's different, why it's a little bit of a premium, and make sure that the farmer actually it's worth it for the farmer to do things in a
That's
better
right.
in a better way for the land, right, and for the animals. So, is in Australia is grass-fed beef always grass-finished, or do we need to draw a distinction?
Yeah, so there is a bit of a grey area there. You can buy something that is grass fed, but it can be finished on grain. So
Mhm.
anything, I believe it's anything under 80 days. So if it's been fed for 80 days or less, it's still classed as grass fed. So when you're shopping, you need to, if grass fed, grass finished is what you're after and what you want to feed your family, you do need to look for 100% grass fed, grass finished. That will guarantee that it has never been fed grain.
Right. So grass-fed beef, unless it's specified, may not, but may be in an intensive feedlot for let's say the last 60 to 70 days, 60 to 80 days of their life.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And are there issues in intensive feedlotting? What are some of the issues that you see? Um, I guess from my very limited city slicker perspective, it seems like that in intensive feedlots, there's more opportunity for disease, which means the more need for antibiotics and certainly when we look at the feed, we already talked about the feed and gaining weight quickly. What is there pollution issues? What are some of the other challenges?
I think like I'm always careful on this subject because I'm a strong advocate for agriculture in Australia, and like I said before, I understand there's a need for both sides of the industry. I
Mm.
know within feedlots they have very high standards, they're looking after the animal welfare and things like that, but it's more of a decision of the consumer. If the consumer is happy to source livestock from that side, and they're happy to, be aware that their livestock is coming from an intensive environment. It's probably a little bit cheaper. It's going to be consistent every day of the week. They're producing cans of Coke. It's the same beef day in, day out. That's totally their option, but it's up to us as business owners and leaders in this industry to educate people and to give them the choice about where their beef comes from. And I think a lot of it comes down to education. Like, people don't understand that 80% of the beef that we consume in Australia and is sold through the big chains comes from an industrial feedlot. People just aren't aware of that. So I think it's about shedding the light on the industry and giving consumers the choice about where the food is coming from that they're feeding their families and making that informed decision.
Yeah, look, and I think that's an interesting point in terms of industrial farming. I think one of the things we learned, I mentioned that when we first started advertising beef bars, we heard from lots of people who thought beef was really terrible for the planet, and I alluded to it before, but basically what we found is that yes, there's all forms of agriculture, plant and animal based, that are not doing great things for the planet, and there are some forms that are actively improving or regenerating the planet, if you like, and there's a whole spectrum in the middle. There's not really a clear delineation between between different types of agriculture, and I think that's something that tends to get left out of the debate about meat and beef particularly. It seems like it's a very simple headline of beef is bad, and no recognition from those who are anti-meat that there's plenty to improve in cropping as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like the reason it is in the media is because beef is an easy scapegoat. They can't talk back. Animals can't give their reason as to why they're good for the environment. It's up to us as people who are part of the agriculture community to do that for them. And I really think like the agriculture industry as a whole is probably doing the most out of any other sector to reduce their carbon footprint, to reduce their emissions, and to have a greener future. Like I was recently at Beef and Rocky, and the things that's happening in the agriculture industry to move forward in this space is unbelievable. Like, we're really doing a lot, which is a lot more than the other industries for, mining, transport, all those other industries. Like, that people are happy just to buy carbon credits, but agriculture is actually making a difference. Like, and we have the ability to do that through different things like feeding seaweed and grazing options and reducing emissions and all that sort of stuff. Like, we're doing it, which is positive. But it is an easy scapegoat. And I think the more people understand how important beef production is to the environment, and it can be healthy and it can be a good option for like a carbon neutral future, they'll understand the benefits of eating beef as well. And like you just mentioned, there are negative impacts with beef and also cropping farming. Like, people are saying don't eat beef, but then they want to go down that vegan or plant-based diet. Like, that itself is so incredibly intensive. Like, livestock can still graze under trees. You can't grow beans under trees or soybeans under trees. You need a fully flat, laser leveled paddock. You're going to be spraying it for, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, tilling the paddocks. Like, the emissions and stuff that come out of that side of farming alone is pretty intensive. So I think we have to be able to find a balance for farming to be harmonious across all industries.
Yep. And one of the things that I hear a lot in the plant-based argument is that if we just got rid of beef, which uses, let's say in Australia, it's about, I think, grazing generally, so that would include beef and wool, sheep for wool and other sorts of grazing. So grazing in Australia uses about 56% of Australia's land mass, and cropping uses about 4% of Australia's land mass. But that's the headline, right? And that's where a lot of thinking stops. But then when you dig below the headline and you realise that, well, only 6% of Australia is suitable for growing crops, it really changes your perspective on, okay, well, we can't just switch out grazing land for cropland. It doesn't work like that.
No.
One of the other things is that, a lot of the reason that grazing uses so much land is that it's usually pretty arid land. And correct me if I'm wrong, I know in some parts of Australia that's not the case, but in those parts of Australia it's probably pretty hilly, not really suitable for cropping. And so, but in the arid parts of Australia, those animals need to range really far and wide to be able to get any sort of productivity out of that land. It would be absolutely impossible to grow crops there. Is that something that? How does that apply to your land? Could you grow crops where you are?
No, my farm, I can't. Like we're it's too hilly where we live, and I have lots. I've like thousands of acres of native timber, and
Yep.
the having a timber asset and having a native forest on my farm, we're not only attracting bird life and wildlife, and our cattle can graze under it, but it's you know even just having that amount of trees around us is so like it's amazing. It's good for the environment, but it is not possible to farm crops in the same areas that people produce livestock. So I think those numbers, although it sounds good for the plant-based movement, it's like bullshit.
And what about trees? The other argument I get is that beef farmers are cutting down a lot of trees. What's your perspective on that?
Cattle can graze under trees. You can't grow broadacre crops under trees. So in order to be for broad scale cropping, you need, like I said, laser leveled flat open paddocks that are farmable, like beautiful country. Whereas, like you said, livestock can graze on all sorts of different terrain, all sorts of different areas. There's far western Australian, you know, climate, livestock can survive out there, but you can't grow crops out there. So I think it's all relative to the area. Depends where you live. It depends what sort of farm you have, how big it is, the type of soil that you have, the grass you can grow. It's all dependent on, yeah, Australia is very unique in what we can produce.
And a lot of your farmers, as I understand it, are planting a lot of trees. It's kind of the opposite
Yeah.
of the perception of what beef farmers do.
Definitely. We have one farmer, he's planted over 100,000 trees on his farm alone in the time that he's been there. And that's just to regenerate his waterways and creeks, and he's, fencing off creeks to avoid erosion and putting in water troughs for the cattle to drink out of. So they're doing more than what they need to. Like they're not doing it because someone told them to do it. They're doing it because they can see the benefit of it for their farm.
And I think one of the benefits that I've seen in chatting with different farmers is that really it enables keeping two things on your land, your nutrients and your water, right?
Mm.
So when you've got land that's got vegetation cover, whether it's grass, shrubs, or trees, that land is much cooler, which means much less evaporation. You've got roots from that vegetation making its way into the soil, which means that it soaks up the available water, which makes it much more drought resistant. So it does seem like a lot of the farming, particularly the way things are heading in the beef industry, is actually making land much more resilient and like we talked about, actively improving the land.
That's right. And I think after the last drought, the horrific drought 2019, 2018, a lot of farmers did make a lot of changes on their farm to drought proof themselves for the future. I mean, even on our farm alone, we did a lot of things there to make sure that the consequences of the next drought aren't so severe. So it takes catastrophic events like that for people to really look at change and how they can implement change on their farm.
Mm. And so again, the power's kind of back in the consumer's hands to put their dollars towards things that are actively improving the land, and that would be choosing the type of farmers that you choose to work with, the type of farmers that we choose to work with. And it certainly would not be just defaulting to plant-based as the solution, as a realistic solution for everything, right? I mean, one of the other challenges with plant-based that we see from a health perspective is that most of the plant-based alternatives, certainly plant-based meats, are basically ultra-processed food. They're seed oils and a big long list of ingredients that you wouldn't recognise as long as your arm. And it's not necessarily either healthier or better for the planet. So
No, and I
that's
think like consumers can now vote with their dollar with that. Like they can choose to be buying products from businesses like Chief and businesses like Our Cow, and they're actually supporting a better movement in the livestock industry and for our environment as well. They're helping farmers being paid more. They're feeding their families with better quality produce. It's better for the environment, that sort of stuff. So, consumers are able to consumers are able to support farmers every day through their food choices.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about seaweed. Can you tell us a bit
Yes.
about why seaweed is being used as feed?
I don't really know that much about it. Sorry.
Is
I
it
do a bit, but
reduces
like
meat buying? Is that
it
essentially?
does, yeah, it does. So I know it like using seaweed in livestock production does reduce methanes. It reduces your carbon emissions. It's something that the livestock industry is looking pretty closely into. I know a lot of farmers are doing trials. A lot of feedlots are using seaweed in their trials at the moment to see if it is reducing methane. So I'm interested to see if it does have an impact, you know, on the industry going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. I follow a lady online by the name of Diana Rogers. She has a Instagram account, Sustainable Dish, and she is one of the producers on Sacred Cow, which is a great movie and a great book, actually. One of the things that she talks about is the biogenic carbon cycle, and I don't know if that's something that farmers have really wrapped their heads around. I actually learnt it first from a farmer who put me on to Diana Rogers. Shout out to Charlie Arnott. But it was really interesting for me because it kind of changed my perspective on methane. So, one of the big complaints about methane is that it may last 10 years rather than 100 years versus CO2 in the atmosphere, but it's 100 times, I think, is the quote, more impactful on warming than carbon. But her point, and this is not her point, I believe it comes from a research group, but they say that focusing on emissions basically is not really taking into account the full picture. So with the biogenic carbon cycle, basically what happens is the methane enters the atmosphere. After 10 years, it gets broken down in... So methane is CH4, so carbon, hydrogen. After 10 years, it gets broken down into carbon dioxide and water, so CO2 and H2O. So the carbon and the hydrogen get split off and combine with oxygen. The water comes down as rain, and the CO2 gets taken up by the plants, and the carbon becomes the plant, and the O2, the oxygen, is released back into the air, which is what we breathe. So, I guess the point is that and then the animal eats the carbon again, right? So the point is that is a cycle. That is a cycle of carbon dioxide, methane going through the atmosphere and being cycled through the environment, which is very, very different from digging up ancient carbon and methane from underneath the core, underneath the Earth's surface, and then reintroducing it into the atmosphere. Now that's not a cycle. That's in Diana's words, a one-way highway, basically, of putting carbon into the atmosphere. So I don't know if that's something that farmers think about, have talked about. Basically, my summary is that I'm not sure that methane from cows is really the biggest issue to solve when it comes to climate change.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think there's other bigger issues that we can be looking at that are going to have a bigger impact in this climate battle that we're all sort of talking about at the moment that no one is really focusing on. Like I said, I think the agriculture industry is doing a lot at the moment to make that change, and it would be good to see the other industries taking as much interest in this as agriculture is.
Absolutely. What do you see as the future of beef farming? Where do you see things? Well, where would you like to see things heading?
The future of beef farming, I would like to see more farmers making a shift to producing an ethical, sustainable grass-fed product if they're able to. I think going forward, we're going to need to do that. It's going to be more and more important. It's becoming more and more expensive for people to produce sustainable food and for farmers to be able to produce sustainable and ethical food. So there sort of has to be a shift from people, wanting a cheap meat product or a cheap snack product that is not very good for them. It's not good for the environment. So we need to have a shift in the way people are shopping to be able to choose to, that they're happy to pay a little bit more for a better product and a better environment. And I think like that goes back to what we've spoken about at the start, like consumers, especially our customers, and I'm sure yours are the same, like they're happy to pay a little bit more for the quality. And that's what we've seen, like our customers bang on about the quality of our products, and that's what, is the same with Chief as well. Like we've tried your bars, they all just arrived today to send out as samples, so very excited for that. But you guys as well, you're changing the way people are snacking. So where do you sort of see the snack industry heading towards?
Well, I think what we're trying to affect change on is we say on our About Us section on our website, we say we want to prove to the big food companies that it is possible to make healthy foods in a packet. The reason that most snacks are not particularly good for you is that it's cheaper, easier, and you get much more shelf life by using the shortcuts. And the shortcuts are basically ultra-processed ingredients. So the reason you would use sunflower oil instead of olive oil, for example, not that we use any oils in our products, but olive oil is more expensive, right?
Yep.
Sunflower oil is probably gives you better texture, so that food product comes out in a nicely, perfectly formed bar, if we're talking about bars. And I think one of the other things that food companies are financially motivated to do is to make things hyper palatable. They want, when you open that bag of chips, they want you to keep, that you pop the Pringles lid, which are delicious, but they're very hard to stop, right?
Yeah.
So that's because they've had food scientists working for many years on making it hyper palatable, so that they sell a lot more stuff, because you eat more stuff. And I think what we're seeing is, from a health perspective, we're seeing a society that is overfed and undernourished. And what I mean by that is they're eating a lot of foods that are high in calories but low in nutrients. So basically, the body will crave more food until you give it the nutrients that it needs. And so we're overeating on these really nutrient-poor foods, and we can see the outcomes for our health as a society. It's there's a lot of challenges, whether it be obesity or diabetes or heart health and you name it. So we really wanted to affect change at a societal level by essentially providing high nutrient, minimally processed snacks in a convenient format that you can choose. It's an easy swap. I've got one here. It's easy to swap that for a Snickers bar or some other sort of supposedly healthy bar that maybe isn't that actually that healthy. So we see that as the first step. We've just got to make it easy for the consumers, and I think that's the same first step for you guys, right? Like, it's making it easy for the consumers to work directly, like to source directly from farmers. And so we, I guess, in terms of where we'd like to see, where we would like to see farming going, is that consumers get behind it. We would like to see we'd like to see consumers get behind producers and products that source from farmers who do things in a, inverted commas, better way. It's certainly not for everyone. I get that, and not possible for everyone. But wherever we can do things in a better way for the planet and for the animal and for our own health, I would like to see governments get behind that. We've seen in other in other countries, governments imposing taxes on meat, taxes on farmers, and I think that stick approach is just the wrong way to go about it. That much better to implement a carrot than a stick. So incentives for farmers who are doing things in a better way, perhaps to make it, perhaps subsidies that make it easier for farmers that are doing it in a better way to compete on price. Those are the sorts of things that I'd like to see to help us transition, continue the transition to more sustainable ways of doing things. And I think that's a win for everyone. Subsidies are not normally, it involves spending money from the government, and it's everybody's money, right? So that's generally a harder thing to get across than a tax, because that's bringing money in. But really, I just see that as society stealing from the pockets of farmers, and not taking any individual responsibility to improve things, right? So, farmers are the people who feed us 3 times a day or more, and they're the ones that we really need to. They're the most critical people in society.
Absolutely.
And if we look after our farmers and we have healthy food, everything. I've read a great book recently called The One Thing, and basically the premise of the book is, always ask yourself every day or every week or every month or every year, whatever decision you've got to make, what is the one thing you can do that will make everything easier and some things unnecessary? And I really do think supporting our farmers to do things in a better way is the one thing that we can do to improve the health of the planet, the health of people, and that's something I'm particularly passionate about.
I think when you think about the food, everything that we come in contact with every single day has come from a farmer. From the food we eat, the meat on our plate, the fruit and veg, the cotton in our shirts, the milk in our coffee, all of that stuff has come from a farmer somewhere along the line. So they're critically important to what we do. And I think you guys are the Chief products are some that I have never tasted before. Like I've tasted a lot of jerky over my time, and there is none that compare to the Chief products. Like you guys have absolutely nailed it in that department. And for me myself, I know I'm using almost 4 Chief products every day, from the collagen in my coffee, the mint bars, the beef and liver capsules actually, and I just got the hot chocolate drink, so that's my nighttime before bed. But I know you guys have got a few other products, new products on the radar up and coming at the moment. So tell me a bit more about them.
Yeah, well, we're definitely doing. We're always doing more. We want to extend our supplement range. We didn't. I just kind of talk about the range. So the beef bars and I've got a few of my things here. Always be branding, I suppose. The beef bars and the biltong, they use, I guess, your kind of primal cuts, beef brisket and topside and those sorts of things. Sometimes outside flat, but a lot of the what we discovered is that a lot of the animal either goes to waste or is doesn't provide a lot of value to the farmer because it will go to, let's say, pet food and those sorts of things, right? So one of the things that is wasted, I always cringe a little bit when I talk about this because people tend to get put off by the fact that collagen comes from cow hides, but I want to be really honest about it. It's basically the skin of cows. A lot of hides in Australia, is certainly what we've been told, maybe you can confirm or deny it, but a lot of hides these days go to landfill because it's cheaper to send them to landfill than to send them for processing. As I understand it, abattoirs used to pay or at least give a credit against the hide because they would on-sell it, but now they charge a fee to process it. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So we did a project with the MLA, Meat and Livestock Australia, and because weirdly enough, even though collagen is on a huge trend globally, up until very recently, there was no producers of collagen in Australia. And when I say a producer of collagen, what I mean is someone who can process a hide and turn it into a tasteless, odorless white powder that is a protein powder, just like a whey protein powder, for example. So we've been able to do that, and we put it into our collagen bars, which are basically based on nut butter, and then we put it into our collagen protein powder, which you having for your nighttime hot chocolate.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple what we do. We just make sure that we don't use any crappy ingredients. For the beef bars and biltong, we don't add sugar like a lot of jerky will add sugar as part of their marinade. We don't add sugar, so they're very low in sugar, and we don't use nasty preservatives. A lot of dried meat products will use added nitrates and nitrites and those sorts of things, which we want to avoid. And basically everything we do is as clean label as possible, just really natural ingredients that you can recognise and you could make at home if you really wanted to, although it's not particularly easy, some of our products, to make at home. That's probably our biggest challenge. A lot of when we avoid the shortcuts, it means it's a lot harder to get things to work. These bars actually melted for the first batch. Kind of, we were sampling them and they started melting into big puddles. Because it's really hard to get nut butter to stick together without using binders and thickeners. And then the next version was really dry, and if you broke it in the car, you'd just get crumbs all over your lap. And we finally figured out how to get it to all work in a nice way that's really tasty. So I appreciate that you are using them and enjoying them, and I love the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm super excited that our cow customers are going to be able to order the Chief products through our website. We're going to have the beef bars and a few sampler packs as well, and I'm sure that we'll be able to continue the relationship and expanding the range with us. I'm shopping the products myself, and whenever I'm looking at the our cow range, I'm looking at what am I buying and what are products that I can add to our range that our consumers are going to align with and purchase. So I'm very excited to be doing the partnership.
No, thank you. And same here. I mean, a lot of our customers will start to see our cow discount coupons in their orders to get them started and give them a head start and I guess encouragement to give it a try. And we'll be sending out a lot of stuff to our customers as well, so everyone will get a chance to give our cow a shot and experience the difference that you guys are able to deliver from your amazing farmers. And if anyone watching or listening has the chance, go and check out the I think it's the Explore menu on your website, which has a lot of your farmers, probably not all of your farmers, listed. One of the farmers that you'll see listed there is Bianca and Dave, and definitely watch their video because it's a really cool, amazing story and very inspiring. So we appreciate you guys
Yeah,
and all the hard work that you do.
thank
You're
you. Very excited.
tougher than what we do.
Definitely. And we also have a promo at the moment. So $250 worth of chief and $250 worth of our cow produce. You can head to the link that I'm sure we'll put somewhere and just tell us why you reckon grass-fed beef is better, and you'll go into the draw to win some goodies. So I might enter that one myself.
You're not allowed to. You haven't read the T's and C's.
Yeah, I did read the T's and C's. I'm out.
Might have to change your last name. All right. Thanks so much, Bianca.
Thanks, Justin.
Okay.